Welcome to my 50th webinar. I regard that as something of an accomplishment. We've been doing these monthly for over 4 years. And so this is big number 50. And I feel like I'm having a celebration with this webinar because I've been working on this topic for over a month. I came across the movie The Circle and saw it. It was a Netflix disc, actually, is what I had. And I was absolutely enthralled. And I thought, well, that'd be the subject material. This would be really good for a webinar. And I went to the library, Fairfield Public Library, which is quite a library, actually, for a little small town library. And it had both the DVD, the Blu-ray, and the book. And so I checked out the Blu-ray and the book and watched the movie again. It stars Emma Watson and Tom Hanks. And so two really great actors. Tom Hanks, of course, everybody is very familiar with in his innumerable roles. And Emma Watson, of course, as Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter series. She was also in The Fault in Our Stars. And no, sorry, the name slips my mind what the other movie was that I enjoyed her in. Anyway, two very fine actors. And the screenplay very much captures the flavor of the book. And the basic theme of the book is that there is this corporation, which is kind of an amalgamation of all high-tech companies that currently exist, Google and Microsoft and Apple and no, not Facebook. Well, not so much Facebook. What's the other one that has a great big Amazon? No, Amazon's free. Microsoft. Yeah, it's just big. So it's a big circular campus that basically becomes like a city unto itself, and people live there. They don't have to live there, but they're encouraged to live there. And they work there, and they play there, and they study there, and everything is there. And it's in that sense, it's a very structured and somewhat controlling environment in that they strongly encourage everyone to participate in the life that is created on this campus, and to maybe not participate very much in life off campus. And in the book, the sinister nature of the leadership of the circle is made more clear than it is in the movie. In the movie, they seem to be trying to do things to help humanity, but along the way, they're gaining control over every aspect of people's lives. And they do that by integrating everything that people do online into one kind of complete app. So it's a little bit like a Google environment online where you can do everything. You can have your email, you can communicate with people, you can search for stuff, you can shop, there's many, many functions. And so that's the basic idea, is to take what Google and some other companies have done and to make it a complete environment. And they develop a camera that people can wear. They can hide these cameras virtually everywhere. And so everything and what everybody's doing can be known. And the whole movie then, the theme of the movie and the book is to explore the consequences of that. What does it mean not to have privacy, but to be fully participatory? And so these two things are balanced, and the discussion is balanced through the story between, is it good to have privacy? Well, privacy and secrecy lead to problems as they explore it in the book. And so there's this basic theme. Secrets are lies. I'll just let that soak in for a second. Secrets are lies. what it means is, in the movie and book, is that what you don't reveal about yourself, secrets, um, mean that you're creating a false image of yourself. You're projecting the image that you, so we say, want to project, and you're not being completely genuine because you're keeping inside all kinds of things about yourself. So it's kind of what I call an iceberg effect, meaning you only see the upper fraction of the iceberg, and there's this vast body of the iceberg. Something like 90% of it is unseen. It's below the surface of the ocean. And so most of us live our lives that way. We feel that we need to be private about so many things. There's so much of us that we don't share. And so we just project who we think people want to see. And we're not really genuine. We don't really show up as ourselves. We're not fully present in our interactions with other people. And there are consequences of that, and the consequences often are that, let me explore first why we do that. The most common reason that we do that is that we are afraid that if people really knew these things about us that we keep secret, if they really knew who we were, they'd reject us. They'd judge us, and they'd reject us and abandon us and betray us, and we would be suffering loneliness and the feeling of having been rejected. And so a big part of why we don't reveal ourselves to other people is that we're hiding because we're afraid of their reaction if they really knew who we were. And we learn this kind of thing at a very, we say early age, but basically we learned it all through our growing up and often into our adulthood. And much of the problems that I see clinically with people are that they are habituated to not being candid, not being transparent, not being open, not being present in their relationships. They can be very, very, very good. Any of us can be very, very good at projecting a happy, sociable, caring, passionate, involved sort of person. And yet there's this whole part of us that nobody ever knows about. That is, some people speak of an inner child or a wounded child, a part of us that's very reticent, very frightened of, what would happen? What would people say if they knew these things about me that I keep secret? And underlying that, psychologists tell us, is a feeling that we're not really worthy, we're not really good enough. We don't deserve other people's affection and love. And the fundamental cause of that is that the love we have experienced growing up has been conditional and even highly distorted. And what conditional means is that I love you as a parent. I'm saying this. I love you when you're a good kid and not when you're a bad kid. And I turn on you and I get angry and sometimes even violent, and either verbally violent or physically violent or both. And I do things that are very painful to you. And so but the most painful, which is I withdraw my love when you don't meet my expectations as a parent. And it can, when I say parent, of course, it's any caregiver, any relative. It could be a school teacher, or it could be, a foster parent or something, whatever the living situation is for a person. But the withdrawal of love, while the worst thing is when there's a withdrawal of love while a person says, I love you. And, it's like and you may remember this from when so many of us in this space room were kids, and the parent maybe gave you a spanking and said, I only do this because I love you. And I don't know if any of you actually experienced that, but but it's the kind of thing that creates enormous apprehension in children. And the result is that we wind up not differentiated from our parents. And usually that means our parents are not well differentiated from each other, that if we have two parents, and from, grandparents and so on, that there's this resulting codependency, it's called, where your feelings are my feelings. If you feel hurt and angry, then I feel hurt and angry. And part of growing up, as they say, as the psychologists say, is learning to know who you are independent of who your parents are. And what happens is that kids growing up, they begin to realize as they get to be 5, 6, 7, sometimes even younger, and then certainly as they get older and older, they realize that their parents aren't perfect. And if they question that, it is usually met with very harsh responses of various kinds. And, don't talk back to me kind of things are often a result of that. And so the result is that kids learn either to fight very hard for who they are or to just give up and withdraw and to be compliant. And in some sense, the fighters are better off than the ones who become compliant. And while I'm saying all of this, you may perhaps be thinking about whether you were compliant with your parents or you were a fighter. The thing about being a fighter is that you know who you are. It's also extremely uncomfortable because you're in often in constant conflict with your parents and other authority figures. And many of the people that are very unhappy today and now very outspoken because they kind of been given permission to be outspoken are people who have had a very difficult time with authority and have, to one degree or another, fought back. And kind of now they have permission to fight back against the system, to fight back against government, to fight back against other authority figures, bosses, and that sort of thing, even the police. And so conflict, is the inevitable result of that. The compliant people, the truly, totally compliant people, are extremely dependent on other people's opinion of them and often other people's care for them. Because what they really need is to be cared for and to be loved unconditionally. And they live in a world where they can't get that. People do not love them unconditionally. And they're very fearful, and that's a reality, and they're very fearful of being judged and criticized and shamed. And so they shrink within themselves. And they may become depressed. They may be self-abusive in one form or another. They may become addicted to alcohol and drugs and such, is ways basically of numbing the pain. Not everybody who uses drugs does so for that kind of reason, but it's certainly one of the things that we see. And so a very complicated pattern of behavior, of response to stimuli, response to other people develops. And the sad thing, the really sad thing about it, is the lack of capacity for intimacy because of not knowing what it is to really believe in yourself as a person, to be an independent person, and the desperate need, which you can't get fulfilled, to be loved unconditionally. Unconditionally means without conditions. It means that you're loved for who you are, as you are, and parents and others are not trying to change you. And one of the best things you can do in a relationship is accept your significant other as the person that they are without trying to change them. And it's a real, I would describe it as an art. It's certainly a skill, but I regard it as so delicate and so refined. I think of it as an art to be able to really accept everybody you meet just as they are and not judge them. Oh, they're just so-and-so. I don't like them because they're such and such. And you just, no, they're just such and such. That's who they are. And you may not trust them completely, or you may not enjoy their company completely. That's okay. But you're not criticizing them, and you're not excluding them. You're not withholding your love. So that brings me back to our movie and the fundamental. It's kind of a meme, isn't it? It's a saying. Secrets are lies. There's actually 3 phrases that get tied together in the story. Secrets are lies. Sharing is caring. And the last one is privacy is theft. And these 3 phrases are very interesting. So secrets are lies, as I've been explaining. That's just basically saying, I'm not being honest with you. I'm not being true with you if I keep secrets from you. And in the movie and in the story, there's some exploration of the consequences of not being honest, not being transparent, not being candid about who you are. Most obvious of those, I think, is that if you're not really being candid about who you are, you're only the tip of the iceberg, then the person that people come to know and enjoy is really only a part of you. And there are consequences to keeping the rest of it buried in how you interact with people, particularly as you start to get intimate with people, you start to get close to people, emotionally close to people. A lot of people are really good at being physically close without any emotional connection. But as people start to develop a real relationship, a connection with other people, there's this sense that, oh, that's I don't want to go there. There's a limit to that. And even if you've appeared to be very genuine, the other person begins to get the feeling that there's more there, and it's not clear what it is, but there's something, it feels like maybe it's not right. And there's a sense of we're not honest. And so there's a distrust that develops, and an uncertainty, and some confusion perhaps. And, you perhaps try to have some conversations, but the other person is who they are, so to speak, but they're only the surface, right? That's who they are. And the rest of it, they don't give you access to. And so you wind up with that feeling of not really being deeply connected. Now, because so many of us grow up that way and live that way, it usually doesn't dawn on us what's going on. We don't really think as we meet or are with other people, oh dear, I'm not really feeling the connection, the intimacy, the ease that comes with real openness, with real candor. And so when there's that feeling going on, well, we just go on and live our lives because that's the way it is with everybody. And, we don't share everything with everybody, right? And so we can easily rationalize, oh, it's just, it is what it is. In a lot of people's lives, we're taught to play roles. So we play a role, say a husband and a wife. And as long as we agree on the rules of what those relationships should look like, then everything's okay. One of my favorite examples of that is the couple in Fiddler on the Roof. And Rip Tavian and his wife, there's a song that they sing at some point in the movie, which describes their relationship. And he says to her, "Do you love me?" And her response is, "Well, I darn your socks, I cook your meals, I take care of your children. Yeah, I love you." No, he says, "Do you love me?" He's looking for the feeling. Do you have that feeling of love, or is it strictly the role? Are you just fulfilling the expectations of your role? And of course, at that time in society, that's what couples were. Couples really were not necessarily very intimate. Other couples were, but oftentimes couples just played the roles. And as long as, each of them met expectations, everything was just fine. But in our modern age, definitely, there is in so many a seeking of real connection and real intimacy. Some authors have said that the reason we have that is because the reason we seek that is that we don't have it. And fundamentally, as humans, we need to be connected. That's the way we were as we evolved. We lived in little villages where everybody knew everything about everybody. There were no secrets. You couldn't keep a secret because there were no closets. And there was no way to hide things. You were always with people, and you lived life because that's the way the life was lived. You just did whatever your role was in the tribe. I remember reading one cultural anthropologist's description. There was a kleptomaniac in the tribe, and they all thought that was very funny because, first of all, most people didn't really have much in the way of possessions, and the people lived in huts with, there weren't doors. And everybody knew where everything was, and so the kleptomaniac would take things to their hut, and everybody knew where they were. And if they really wanted them, they might ask for them back, but otherwise they just let the kleptomaniac sort of hoard them. But it was kind of funny because there was a deviant behavior, you might say, but the group didn't judge. They didn't reject the person. They just thought it was kind of funny, and they went along with it. In those societies, there's no concept of mental illness. People just are who they are, and we just accept them and we care for them. If somebody's depressed, we make sure that they get food and, are taken care of, or, in terms of taking care of themselves. But usually in those societies, life is pretty simple. And so it's not a big deal. And a person could just be depressed. Didn't happen very often, I'm sure, because for one thing, reactive depression was essentially unknown. We're talking about endogenous depression, which was actually not that common a phenomenon. At least it didn't seem to be. But people didn't regard it as mental illness. It was just, that's who they were. They were kind of a more sad, quiet sort of person, and that was okay. And other people would be much more outgoing and exuberant, and that was okay too. Anyway, secrets are lies. The sharing is caring, I think, is one of the fundamental themes that it gets explored quite deeply in the book and the movie, The Circle. And the idea is that when we share ourselves with people, we are connected with them, and there's a mutual caring. It's easy to care for somebody who you feel is really present with you, is really showing up with you, is really candid with you. It's very hard to really care about somebody. You have that uncomfortable feeling that you're not sure who they are. You're not sure that what you're seeing is really enough of the story of that person that you can feel comfortable being with them. So very simply, sharing is caring means that when I share with you, I care about you. I want you to know me, and I want to know you. And so sharing is caring is a beautiful, beautiful theme that's well developed. There's another theme which is more difficult. It's privacy is theft. The notion that privacy is theft means that you are keeping from people the opportunity to have a meaningful relationship with you. Isn't that an interesting theme? That when you don't share, when you keep things private, you are denying others the experience of who you are and what you have to contribute to their lives. And most of us don't think about that. That's why the idea is kind of novel, and I was really struck by it. We don't usually think about how what we keep to ourselves is, in a sense, stealing from others. You see this in the world in horrible ways. Corporations certainly keep their secrets. Part of that is because of competition. They don't want the competition to know what they're up to. They don't want the competition to know how they succeed or how they do what they do. And we think that's all right because we live in a competitive society. We just kind of accept that. We don't think that collaboration, open source software is a good example of that, right? When a company puts out some software and they say, here's the source code, you can add to that. And then people collaborate. All kinds of people collaborate. and it makes a working system that involves lots and lots of people, and they're all invested together. And so they all care about each other. They all want everybody else to succeed. Somebody does something that's really cool, they add it to the software, and then it's like, oh, that's really nice. Now we can all have that. And so, there's perhaps not as great an economic return, I'm not sure. But on the other hand, there is this sense of community about a thing. And this sense of community can be a very powerful stimulus to creativity and the mutual enjoyment, the mutual satisfaction that everybody who's participating has in developing this thing all together, all around the world. Pardon me. So it's a wonderful opportunity that we have when we don't hold things in ourselves and we don't, so to speak, steal from other people what we could share with them. So that's a very interesting thing. Just wanted to check. There were a couple of ideas that were added to this as elaborations. I just want to share those with you, and I'm going to read my notes here so that I get these straight. One of the lines is, "It was not knowing that was the seed of madness, loneliness, suspicion, and fear." I think that's a very powerful line. It's not knowing. It's that feeling of not knowing that drives people mad in terms of their relationships, in terms of feeling like they're connected or not connected to other people. And so they evolved the concept, another meme from the story: knowledge is a basic human right. Knowledge is a basic human right. Access to experience is a basic human right. And then they talk of radical openness, radical transparency is the idea. I have a little thing here. It's not a quote from the film, but it raises an interesting question. Do people need privacy more than they need transparency? The lead in the story, May Holland, played by Emma Watson, answers that question that secrets are lies. Access to knowledge brings freedom. This applies everywhere, but in relationships, knowing and not hiding make intimacy possible. And so I want to conclude then with this basic idea that transparency, openness, candor are keys, are keys to intimacy, and secrecy and hiding, privacy, are the opposite. And so we're going to move in just a couple of minutes into our group clearing session, where we'll ask each of you to look at, what are you holding inside? What secrets do you keep? And how might that be affecting your relationships? So that's it for my presentation on Secrets or Lies. And we look forward to having you join us next month.